This is close. And I'm going to try to start off at low key and familiar and like we're sitting in a living room as I can, because it's a little bit of a different night, but I think you're going to be in for some great entertainment and be really happy that that you came out on what's beautiful weather because it's not raining. I'm Larry Rogers. I'm Dean of the College of Liberal Arts, and I've been coming up here through American Strings now for what feels like a lot of years. And I'll give you an introduction of our folks tonight. But before I do that, I want to say that this is interesting in part that we're doing this because tonight is a bit of a transition in all kinds of interesting ways. And among other things, I know you're going to be really sad to hear this. This is probably the last American Strings concert we're going to be doing in this space because we're going to be in Prax for the next one. But I do want to give a shout out to the folks here. I mean, this was never imagined as a musical venue, and they've done everything they can to make it as acoustically good as you can. But word on the street is, now you heard it from me first, we've now done some acoustical testing in the new space in Prax, and I was hoping we could say it was going to be the best venue in the Mid-Willamette Valley from a acoustic point of view. Now I'm deciding it's going to be the best venue in Oregon. That's probably not enough. It may be the best venue in the Pacific Northwest, but what you're hearing from me, because prove me wrong, it's the most beautiful sound on the whole West Coast. And I'm actually not kidding. Okay? So April 6th, that's the weekend where everybody can come out and, you know, we're having a big party and come by and see it, and you can walk around and kind of see what's going on there. So we are super, super excited about that. But let's talk about American Strings for a minute. The reason that this is also a bit of a transition is that, you know, American Strings has always been billed by Bob as something of a kind of backstage pass, right? Where we get to sort of see what's behind the scenes. Well, tonight we're flipping the script and we're going to see what's behind the scenes with him. And that's going to be fun. And in part, it's also an opportunity, and I'll introduce her more formally in a minute, for you to get to know Kelly, because Kelly is going to pick up doing American Strings in the role of Bob Santelli, which of course are big shoes to fill. But the thing I want to assure everybody of, and Bob will certainly certify this, she is up to it. Let me tell you more about her in just a minute. But I actually have to have a commercial break here. Can you work with me for just a second? The commercial break is, it is somebody's birthday yesterday, Bob Santelli's. He didn't know I was going to say this. I'd almost ask you to sing happy birthday, but I won't. Anyway, if Marilyn Monroe were here, I would let her sing to him. Instead, we're just going to say happy birthday to Bob. So a little bit of background here. He's going to be talking a lot in here about kind of where he was, but I want to give you a quick snapshot of what got him here to begin with, because you may not know the story. It was, I think it was fall of 2008. I was a new dean here. I just arrived. Sue, my wife, is here. We have 3 kids. Our family had arrived. And I got this sort of note in my from my then assistant. She said, there's a guy out there that wants to talk to you. Well, it turns out it was Bob, and Bob was just floating in from out of town. At the time, I think he was living in Bainbridge Island in Seattle. He had recently accepted the job as the education director and executive director of the Experience Music Project, which is that Frank Gehry building in Seattle that went on to become sort of some crazy things, but it was Paul Allen's playground is what I like to think of it. Well, Bob had been brought in as the person to kind of oversee that. And this is after he had come from, as the education director, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And the reason he was able to have that job, and he's got great stories about, you know, driving the crazy bus from down Eugene out to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And his dad was a highway patrolman, and they got stopped by a highway patrolman, the whole bit. You can imagine what was on the bus. Before that, he was a very well-known rock journalist who'd spent a good bit of time in the Caribbean and has amazing stories about that. But he had not yet taken the job at the museum of the, at the Grammy Museum in LA as the executive director here. That came after I talked to him in 2008. So he comes in and you're thinking, well, why is he here? Well, it turns out he was here because he was trying to tell us that we were doing something really, really great at OSU. And he had a lot of experience with universities. But the reason he knew about OSU is because he had a daughter here who at that time was a swimmer and was the editor of the Barometer for the sports section. And she's the biggest beaver in the room. And she now lives out in Newport, and she has twins and another child. And actually, Bob's wife, Cindy, is here as well, grandmother. Anyway, it became a family thing. And he was simply in here sort of saying, I love what you're doing there because it's really easy to connect with a place that needs a lot of help. And I'd like to do that. And what I mean by help is that we are off the beaten track of American music in a lot of ways. It's not like being in LA. It's not like being in New York City. And so you have to work a little harder here to be able to kind of bring the sorts of people here and to kind of elevate the talent that he has. The one thing I won't hold against him, I guess I will. We hold this against him. He does have a USC pedigree. Yeah, that's a problem. Anyway, I'll try to move past that. So anyway, he came in and then we kept in touch and everything. And pretty soon he ended up with a position here as he was moving out of the job at the Grammy Museum. And we've had him ever since. And he's added all kinds of exciting things to the university around Album Club. He's taught a whole bunch of classes. What are you teaching right now? You're teaching Beatles and Bob Dylan. Yeah, and it's the Beatles is the class that every student you hear from their parents saying, how do we enroll get back into college? Okay, so that was the background about what brought him here. And we've been really happy he's been here, and he's done all kinds of interesting, unique things that wouldn't have happened if he weren't here, which is often what you like an academic person to bring to a university. Okay, with him tonight is the next round, next generation. And this is Kelly Bosworth. And Kelly Bosworth is Horning Assistant Professor of Public History and Popular Music at Oregon State right now. And she serves on the Horning curatorial team for Prax. And she teaches 20th century U.S. history classes. She's finishing up her PhD at the University of Indiana right now. She's going to come full time with us. And what's really cool about her is that I'm saying this academic stuff, but she's an absolutely fabulous musician. She's a singer. She's a guitar player. She's a songwriter. She's a terrific ethnomusicologist. She's working on a really cool project that she could talk to you about sometime that's about an Oregon-based town and the music that was a part of that. But mostly one of the reasons that we really like having her too is that she is indeed an Oregonian. And so she has a kind of fresh insider's look for kind of what's going on in the state, and will be able to bring that to the table as a part of American Strings. The one other piece is that before she came back here, she worked in the archives of traditional music and the Smithsonian Institute's National Museum of American History and the Institute for Digital Arts and Humanities. So that gives you a kind of sense of how interested she is in folk music and sort of roots music and American popular music and a lot of the same kinds of things that Bob has brought to the table. So we're having this transition tonight. I'm about done here, and I'm going to turn it over to them. Let's see, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to tell you. I don't think so. Well, I'm sorry, one more thing, which is I don't have any idea what they're going to talk about tonight. I really don't. They've got a program planned. I'm looking forward to it. But if they finish and there's a question period and you haven't heard this talked about, I would really like you to ask Bob about the parenting advice he got from Ringo when the two of them were together in England when his kids were quite young. That's a story he told to a big gathering at OSU one time, and it's definitely worth retelling. Yeah, right? So raise your hand and do that for me. Let's put our hands together and welcome these two nice folks to the stage.
Really nice. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Okay. Wait,
Hey,
I'm
Bob.
supposed to be sitting there.
Do you want to sit
Yeah,
here?
no,
What's
I'll
your good
interview
side?
you. Right.
Yeah.
All right. No, go ahead.
Hey, everyone. It's wonderful to be with you all here this evening. Hey, Bob.
I'm happy to be here. I'm happy you're there too. You know, this was something that I have to say, I was always really worried at some point. I knew I'd have to give this up, and I didn't know who that would be. And then I met Kelly, and you'll hear more about her. But um, I'm very actually pretty calm sitting in this seat because I know you're going to be doing the questions. So
I thought
thank you
you
for
were
being here.
I thought you were gonna say I was really worried at some point someone would switch the spotlight onto
No,
you.
no.
Um, well, what was the parenting advice that Ringo gave you?
No, they're supposed to raise their hand.
Can I-
No, the parenting advice. Well,
I'm like, I'm too curious.
my kids are going to say you didn't listen to him, Dad, but no, I was doing a book with Max Weinberg, who's the E Street Band drummer. I'm from New Jersey, and we all grew up together. And the book was called The Big Beat, and it was Max's idea to try and get the history of rock and roll from the drummer's point of view, because as you know, when the interviews occur in pop music, it's always the lead singer or the lead guitar player. No one ever talks to the drummer. And so Max had this idea that they have these great stories that's no one's mind. So we did this book. It was a book of interviews with rock's greatest drummers, and Max, the drummers that Max thought, he too is an amateur music historian. Anyway, one of them, and certainly Max's greatest influence, is Ringo Starr. So we went to Tittenhurst, which is where John Lennon and Yoko Ono once lived before they moved to New York. And my oldest daughter had been born 6 months prior, and we were on the road. We were over in England for about 6 weeks, 8 weeks doing interviews. And I got up one morning pretty early, and I went out to the man-made lake, and I was just, I was homesick, quite honestly. I'm thinking my daughter's going to go to college before I get home. And so I was just sitting there, and all of a sudden, Ringo taps me on the shoulder. Says, "What are you doing?" He came up early and smoked back then, and he was going out for a smoke. And um, I said, like I'm a first-time father, and I'm kind of homesick. I'm wondering what's going on back home. And he says, "So you're a father, huh? Hmm. Get in the boat." There's a rowboat there. And Ringo proceeded to get behind the oars. I sat there as a tourist, and he rowed me around the lake, giving me advice on how to be a great father. And when it was over, I still couldn't believe a Beatle. I grew up loving the Beatles, and I just got fatherly advice from Ringo Starr. Holy crap. And it was, yeah, true story. And I tried to live up to it. And the coolest thing, though, is that when I left, he gave me a drum head, and he put, to Bob, and he said, "What's your daughter's name?" I said, "Oh, her name is Jaren." And I had to spell it for him because that's an odd name for a girl. And he says, "You gonna have any more?" And I said, "I think so." So he says, "I'm gonna put a little plus here. When you get another one, call me. I'll fill it in." So I did. I had daughter number 2 who went to OSU, filled it in. I had a son. I called him. He filled it in. He said, "How many more you having?" And I said, "That's it. That's it." And so he said, "Okay, there you go." So it's one of my prized possessions, Ringo Starr drumhead with one of my kids' names on it.
That's amazing. That's a great story. How many of you have been to an American Strings before?
Yeah.
Is anyone here for the first time? Amazing. Welcome. So I got to OSU the fall last year, and we went out to coffee or
You did,
something.
yeah,
Yeah.
you did.
He welcomed me to OSU, and it was a great conversation. And I think you were already trying to offer me your job at the end of it. We're like, oh,
No, I was
okay,
very
cool.
taken
Okay,
by
cool.
it, yeah.
There's someone else here who's doing this. And it's been great because over the last year, I've really gotten to have a perspective on all the different things that you do at OSU, and just to hear the snippets of all the things you're doing around the country too. So I get the sense that for, the American Strings faithful, you all know a different part of Bob Santelli's work than the students, right? What you all get to hear about in class, and the exhibition work at Prax. And then of course you've written a dozen books,
Dozen music
a
books.
dozen, a dozen music books, over 500 evening with conversations at the Grammy Museum alone, these kind of interviews, over 100 exhibitions in your career. So this kind of many different parts to how it all gets put together. So I'm really hoping tonight that you all can get a sense of just the multifaceted work that Bob is doing at OSU and around the country. And I think in all of those different modalities and ways of expressing, what comes through is your love of music. So I think we should just start there. Like, where does that spark come from? Is there a time like early in your life? Was it, I know you're a guitar player. Did it come from playing music or listening to music?
No, it it was listening to music. I grew up in New Jersey, and my earliest musical moment is Frank Sinatra. We grew up 5 miles from Hoboken, in a place called West New York, and my parents were big Sinatra fans. My mother was a Bobby Soxer and
Yeah.
totally into Sinatra. So that's what I remember. But thing that really turns me like this is what I want to do was seeing. I was a little kid, but I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan in 1964, and that point, that was it for me. That was it. And I remember my birthday's January 31st, and they were on February 9th, and my dad was working, so we didn't celebrate my birthday, but I asked for a football. I don't remember this. My mom told me this. And after the Beatles, I said, I don't want the football anymore. Can I get a guitar? And so I did. And I started to play and had bands all through high school and college. And then I really loved writing about music, to tell
Yeah.
people about music, and I switched to journalism and never looked back. I wasn't a great musician. I knew I really didn't have anything. I liked writing the songs for the band, but I wasn't a great player, self-taught. And but once I started to write music criticism, I just I just fell in love with that. And then it was very easy to go from journalism into museum world, because in essence, as a journalist, you tell a story,
Right.
and I tell a story with the exhibits as well.
Totally. That's funny. I feel like I have kind of a similar trajectory in terms of performing and realizing, you know, I, the thing that I love about music can be expressed in so many different ways, and actually having to be the one who's performing, that's a really stressful job and exhausting, and like comes with a lot of like arranging your life around this really particular thing, and giving kind of something so personal to. So I think I hope our students know that too, that there's so many different ways to care about music, to express that care about music, and to be a part of the music industry. You don't have to be this like singular talent.
No. And
In
whether you can be an accountant and work in the music
Yeah.
business, right? You could be a business major and become a manager. There's lots of ways to fulfill your dream of being in music and around musicians and hearing music every day of your life.
Yeah, and that makes me think, so you have made a lot of your career working in music museums, which when you were growing up didn't even really exist, right? So I mean, we talked about EMP, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Grammy Museum, none of those existed until you were a part of creating them. So talk about, what is that concept of a music museum? Why is it so important? And how did you get so lucky to get to rock out in all these awesome
You know
spots?
what the luck is? The luck was just having the right skill sets at the right time.
Yeah.
Had there been a music museum when I was a kid, that would have been it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because I loved history. I love museums, and then to have music and tell those stories, it would have been great. I got lucky. Like I said, I was in the right place at the right time. I was writing for Rolling Stone, among other magazines, and Jan Wenner, who is the publisher, founder of Rolling Stone, he was also, along with Ahmet Ertegun, the great Atlantic Records producer. They started the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they had the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame going since 1986, but they didn't have a place to put the honorees, so they just had the induction ceremony every year in New York in the Waldorf Astoria. At some point, they agreed we need a museum. They ran a big national program, USA Today. What city should have have the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And quite honestly, a lot of people said, well, it should have been in Memphis or it should have been New Orleans, really the places where rock and roll emerged. But Cleveland, Ohio got it. And there was some reasons for it historically, but they really saw it as an opportunity to rebuild their downtown, that this could be an anchor for downtown revival. There were no such thing as music museum curators. So long story short, Jan deputized 5 writers from 5 different areas: punk, heavy metal, etc. I was the roots guy, and he said, "Okay, you have 18 months, put it together." So all we had, which was a brilliant move on his part, we had Rolodexes at the time. We had the contacts because as writers, we knew the manager of Eric Clapton or Bruce Springsteen, so we can get to them very quickly to get artifacts, to get the interviews. And in 18 months, we opened it on time, on budget, to great international acclaim. It was shocking. And of the 5, 2 of us moved to Cleveland to run it, to open it. You know, the other 3 went back to being journalists, and I left being a curator and became the director of education because I had teaching experience. I was teaching at Rutgers University in the American Studies program, and I fell in love with it. I loved it, and I said, "There's no looking back now for me."
Yeah, I had an experience of using the word Rolodex in a classroom recently.
Where's my student? You know what a Rolodex is? Just go like this. From me, exactly. See, I teach everything. We learn all kinds of things in my class.
You don't forget your first experience saying something to some people in their early 20s and getting blank looks. It's just that's the moment you really become an adult.
I think I asked one of them, "Would you Xerox this for me?" And they went, "What? Copy? I mean, copy."
So talk about your teaching. You teach some great classes that Larry mentioned on campus. And it seems like the students this is the kind of thing that, at least this is what I'm banking my career on, that students, butts in seats, music will get butts in seats, and then we can blow minds with how much you can think with music, right? Like it's fun. But it's fun because it matters to us, and it matters to us because it's also about power and identity and expression and these things that are so meaningful. That's why the kind of history and music that I try to put together is. So tell us more about your classes. What's your approach to teaching too? Like what's part of that relationship with the students for you?
Well, you guys could probably answer that question for me, but
comments will be allowed in the question answer session. You can clarify anything.
Yeah, don't say anything bad. No, all kidding aside, I wanted to bring my passion for music to the class. And I always felt that music was America's greatest cultural resource. You know, there were the film people would argue, John Lewis would certainly argue with me, but I just thought that was it, that who we are as Americans can be best explained by listening to our music. And as a result, the young people need to know the history of the music because in essence it's the history of our culture, it's a history of our identity. So I just tried to bring that in, and then I had so much experience with many people who teach popular music history or blues or jazz. They're academics, but I always had one foot in academia and then one foot in the music world, so I knew been backstage, I've been on tour, so I could bring a different element to it, and I love teaching the Beatles class because the coolest thing, and you guys perhaps know this, but I get like 100 kids in class. I'm thinking, well, 100 kids are interested in the Beatles. That's unbelievable. And then I found out, almost all of them, you guys probably can agree to this, but they learned the Beatles from their parents or even grandparents. And the coolest thing about the class is that, the kids had some knowledge and they would ask some questions, but by like the 6th or 7th week, the questions are really, really good. And I found out that they were questions from their parents, right? To bring in and ask. And so during COVID, I just said, the hell with it. Just have them attend. It doesn't sit by the computer. So we had a lot of parents taking the class as well, which was terrific. That was quite a joy.
That's awesome. We have a couple of videos we're going to get to show. And I want to queue up the one about Bob Dylan
Yeah.
at the White House. And I know you have I want you to kind of set this for us, but
Yeah.
he's going to pull it up. And also we have some people with us on Zoom too. So I just want to say welcome to all of you on Zoom, and we're going to share the screen so they can see it as well. So you don't have to rely on having to watch this through the Zoom. But it's interesting when you talk about, I grew up loving the Beatles because my dad introduced me to it, and, cassette tapes in the Volvo, and
The Volvo.
my dad said at some point as a kid, I said, our Volvo smells like the Beatles. And he would he loved that story. But so like, I think I had a crush on John Lennon as like a 10-year-old, like, that's kind
A
of
lot of
sad.
that.
Yeah. But we share a love of Bob Dylan. And I think we also both have had the experience of doing that kind of, you find an artist who matters to you, and then you look at who are the artists who mattered to them, right? And then who are the artists who mattered to them. And I think for a lot of people who get really sucked into the world of American roots music, it's through that kind of understanding that cycle of inspiration. So like for Bob Dylan, I actually the first Bob Dylan song I ever heard was Sean Colvin covering it on her. She has a cover album, New York City based singer-songwriter in the 90s, 2000s. She still is great today. And so then I was like, who wrote that song? Okay, Bob Dylan. And then who did Bob Dylan look up to? Okay, Woody Guthrie, who did Woody, like, and then you're in the Lead Belly, and, you just keep kind of,
Yeah. Well, a lot of
back.
baby boomers who are here, you did the same thing. I did it too. We would see, a song from a British invasion band like the Animals or the Stones. You say, who's M. Waters? He's
Yeah.
not in the Rolling Stones. And then you would work your way back,
Yeah.
and that's how a lot of baby boomers fell in love with the blues in particular, myself included.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
We should watch the Jagger clip after this,
Oh.
but this is from a performance that Bob Dylan did at the White House. It was really special. Will you
Yeah.
set it up for us a little bit?
I did when the Grammy Museum opened in 2008, we had a special exhibit that opened called Songs of Conscience, Sounds of Freedom. And it was an exhibit basically that celebrated mostly the music of the civil rights era. I wanted to show how music acted as an agent for change in America, particularly in the 60s with civil rights. She did this great exhibit, and unbeknownst to me, it's either someone from the White House or someone from WETA, the public television station out of the DC area, saw it and brought that information back, of all places, to the White House. Oddly enough, Mrs. Obama and President Obama were interested in doing something that had been around since Carter's years called In Performance at the White House. It's a program where the president, whoever it is, brings in music. Some presidents do more than others. George Bush did one. Obama did like 197, but there's a little difference there. But anyway, so I get a call. I get a call saying it was Mrs. Obama's office saying, I understand you have this exhibit, and we were interested in celebrating the music of the civil rights. Would you be interested in working with Mrs. Obama on an education program? I couldn't, this doesn't happen every day. I said, yes, I would, I stuttered a little bit and I said, yes, I would love to do it. And then a few days later, got a call from the executive office, one of Obama's president's people saying, well, would you be interested in doing a concert too? And I knew what In Performance to the White House was. And very quickly, about 2 days later, I got another call saying, and the president would really like if you invited Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan never been to the White House. I did a book on Bob Dylan and a big exhibit on Bob Dylan. So they did their homework. In fact, well, maybe he could get that. As soon as I heard that, I said, well, this ain't happening, because Dylan was not going to do this. But I decided I would call Jeff Rosen, his manager, who was a friend of mine. And I called him. I said, I know what the answer is already, but president would like Bob Dylan to come for this program I'm going to do called Songs of Conscience, Sounds of Freedom, and celebrate the civil rights. And Jeff said, I'll ask Bob, but he probably won't do it. I said, I understand. 2 or 3 days later, he called back and he said, Bob will do it. I couldn't believe it. That was more shocking than even getting a call from the White House, quite honestly. Anyway, so we go, And I'm thinking, what song is Bob going to do? There's a whole story behind. I won't get into that now, but suffice it to say, Bob Dylan came to the White House not knowing, so we thought what song he was going to play. We get to rehearsals that day, and I said, Bob, the Secret Service wants to know what song you're going to play because they have to approve it all. And Bob said, I don't know. What do you think I should play? I said, 6 months, and you don't know what song you want to play, huh? Okay. I think you should do The Times They Are Changing. And he said, all right, I'll do that one. And sure enough, he had rehearsed it, because what you're going to see here is Bob Dylan doing The Times They Are Changing. And I bring this up because it's one of the most emotional moments for me as an American and as a music fan. There's a verse in there that says, come senators and congressmen, please heed the call. Don't stand in the doorway. Don't block up the hall, etc. And here I am standing side stage. The president is like first row, and Bob's like 3 feet away from the president. And he sings this song, and there in the audience are senators and congressmen. It was the most amazing thing. And the Secret Service kept saying, do not let anybody shake the hand of the president. Get near the president, they go side stage. Bob finished the song, and he goes, shakes hand of the president, right?
Not a rule
I got the worst looks from the Secret Service, but in the end, they were nice enough. I don't know who sent it to me, but I got the picture of Bob reaching over and shaking the hand of President Obama as a gift for getting Bob to the White House, which is pretty good. So it's not the greatest version of it's kind of dark. Bob wanted the room very dark, so it's darker than it would normally be, but you'll get a sense of it. It's Times They Are Changing at the White House.
Folk musician and musicologist Guy Carawan introduced many songs to the civil rights movement. Reflecting on those days, Carawan wrote, the songs could take on so many meanings.
Get a little
They
louder.
could be jubilant, or they could be a lament because someone had gotten killed. They could help people gather their determination, or they could be funny and satirical. You could dance to some of the songs, anything to help people get through all this. The music became a part of everything. You couldn't tell who was a singer and who was an organizer, because the organizer sang and the singers organized. Ladies and gentlemen, Bob Dylan.
Come gather round, people, wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown, and accept that soon you'll be drenched to the bone if your time to you is worth saving. You better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone, for the times they are a-changing. Come writers and critics who prophesize with your pen, keep your eyes wide, the chance won't come again. And don't speak too soon, for the wheel's still in spin, and there's no telling who that it's naming. For the loser now will be later to win, for the times they are a-changing. Senators, congressmen, please heed the call. Don't stand in the doorway, don't block up the hall, for he that gets hurt will be he who has stalled. There's a battle outside and it's raging, and it'll soon shake your windows and rattle your walls, for the times they are a-changing. Come mothers and fathers throughout the land, don't criticize what you can't understand. Your sons and your daughters are beyond your command. Your old road is rapidly aging. Get out of the new one if you can't lend a hand, for the times they are a-changing. Well, the line it is drawn and the curse it is cast. The slow one now will later be fast, as the present now will later be past. The order is rapidly fading, and the first one now will later be last, for the times they are a-changing.
It's fun.
Yeah, that's pretty special to have been a part of making that moment happen.
Oh, yeah. Highlight. I grew up loving the Beatles and Bob Dylan, which is why I teach the classes, right? But yeah, it was surreal. And the funny thing is, the interesting thing is, during the day before the concert, Mrs. Obama and I would do educational programs. So the Grammy Museum raised money to bring almost 2,000 kids in 7.5 years to the White House, all expenses paid. We got people to pay for it so the kids could come. As a matter of fact, we brought Oregon State students twice to the White House, which was great. And that was probably just as important. And Mrs. Obama, every time came out, I got to spend a few minutes with her, catch up, because I would see them kind of semi-regularly. And I would bring artists. So there'd be a number of artists on the show. We would do a discussion and they would play. The kids, one of the great stories is we had Smokey Robinson there, and we decided to do something different. And Mrs. Obama had this idea, it wasn't mine. And she said, why don't we break up and do have the kids do Motown song? We were celebrating Motown. It's great, it's a good idea. So we had the Motown artists that were there break up with the students, and they work with the students to write a song, right? So we heard later on that one of the African-American kids, he was like 8th grade or so, he went home and his mother said, well, so did you go to the White House today? He says, yeah, I was at the White House. How was it? He says, cool. I kind of hung out with Smokey Robinson. And she said, with Smokey Robinson? And he said, yeah, I even wrote a song with him, So that was pretty cool. And they actually did. People like Smokey Robinson are amazing people, and they just love the kids and they participate.
Cool.
So it was great. Justin Timberlake did. I mean, they all participate. No one ever turned us down when we asked them to play. Not one
Not
person
even
turned
Bob
down.
Dylan.
Not even Bob Dylan. Exactly.
Famously good at saying no, thank you. Can we put up the other this is Mick Jagger at the White House.
Yeah,
that was also at the White House.
We
should
show
play
some of that.
Yeah, just play a little bit of that for contrast to how Bob Dylan interpreted this solemn moment. But I also, are we ready? Oh no,
This is the blues. We're celebrating the blues. And Mick Jagger, even though he's not American, he borrowed a lot from American music and asked to be on the show, asked to be a part of it. So you don't say no to Mick Jagger. So here comes Mick. This is the White House. No shoots of President Obama was this wistful look on his face.
And I can't turn you loose for nobody. If I do, I'm gonna lose my life. 'Cause I love the very yes I do now. Can do everything for you, yeah. You're a hip chick, mama, I know. And I love is just for only you. I'm gonna give you everything I
George Washington in the back.
Give everything I hold you
sort of. You gotta pay to see the rest of that.
That's I'm thinking of I assign in my courses people to watch Merle Haggard at the White House. We just look so
Oh, yeah.
uncomfortable. Worth a Google.
We had Willie Nelson. They said Bob Santelli brought his grandfather.
That was great. We have a couple more videos we want to show, but I want to honor someone really special who's in the crowd. Aaron, are you out here? Where's Aaron? Aaron's back here in the back corner. Aaron Sneller, known to many of you, friend to many of you, has been one of the real backbones of American Strings and will continue to be a huge asset in all of the programming that Prax is going to do. So I would just love to, in the honor of Bob has been running this program for 6-7 years.
I haven't. We have. It's been Erin and I give props too. And not only this, but Album Club as well.
Yeah.
So she's been a part of it.
So big round of applause to Aaron Sneller. And Aaron is now one of the people who's probably spent the most time out of anyone on the programming staff in Prax itself, in the actual building, which you can go in without a hard hat on now.
No, you have to wear one. I wore one today.
To wear one. Okay. Hard hatted up and learning all the tech specs for the new building and running an incredible back of house team. So we're really excited about that. And I just wanted to make sure Aaron got, this is kind of a transition. It's a transition because we're moving to this new building. It's a transition because, hey, hi, you don't know me, but it's also, we're going to continue to kind of to work together and really make sure that this flagship program that has had such success bringing really stellar musicians to be part of the conversation at OSU and at Corvallis. So we're going to keep, Bob's going to help me.
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere. The reason, it just made sense. Programs should be refreshed. And I thought it was really time to do it, and how apropos to do it when we're going into the new space. After I did all my dirty work on this stage, you're going over there to the state-of-the-art place. And what Larry said, I heard that. I heard the speakers today. I heard the sound system in there. Wow, you are in for a treat. And so are you. Yeah, I'll be sitting there, but I'll be envious. But it is great. Get your tickets, because it is, what Larry said is absolutely true. It's fantastic. Yeah.
And I want to thank Dean Rogers too this is opening Prax is really a pinnacle moment. And for someone like me who gets to show up at the party, it's absolutely a dream. And we're all gonna really enjoy having this new cultural monument.
You forgot one thing when you were talking about me coming here. One of the reasons, I don't know, maybe you don't even know this, but one of the reasons why I said I want to be a part of this was because you talked about this new place that you wanted to build that would have the state-of-the-art, incredible recital hall, concert hall, exhibition gallery. And I thought, wow, to be a part of that and to build it up, because you didn't say also, but Oregon State was it was the second named Grammy Museum affiliate. USC was the first. It wasn't because of my alma mater, but because they're down the street from the Grammy Museum in downtown LA. And also they have an incredible music industry program. But this was the second. This was the second and the only one in the Pacific Northwest. And one of the primary reasons, aside from working for him, was also his dream of building that place. I said that you can build on, because you don't have the facilities. It's really hard. It's really hard to attract really good students. Having that, holy mackerel. So it's a tribute to you and what you gave, and you allowed me to be on a steering committee to help create that, which was a joy. And now it's coming to fruition, and I'm giving this up.
Well, let's talk about something you're not giving up. The first exhibition at Prax at the opening season, again, put April 6th in your calendar, because I believe we're going to have a whole weekend of free events, and there's going to be a ticketed event. but I think everyone's going to be able to see the whole building, right? They can go into the classrooms, go into, the conference rooms and everything. So definitely come join us on April 6th. But one other place you can check out when you're there is our 3,000 square foot gallery space, which is a daunting amount of space to fill with objects. And the opening exhibition will be curated by our own Bob Santelli. Sonic Booms: How Music Technology Built the Sound of American Music. Do I have that mostly
Pretty
right?
close, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, pretty close.
So tell us about
Yeah.
Sonic Booms.
Well, it's again part of the dream to do the first exhibition here, so I get to do that. I get to break the room in. It's what we're trying to do is show how the arts and the sciences and technology and music all become a seamless story in American culture. So we came up with the idea, Sonic Booms, but about technology. How without technology, American music would sound very, very different. So it's a story behind, starting with Thomas Edison, actually, in 1877, and going right on up through Now and Then, the Beatles' most recent song, which was done by AI. So what we've tried to do in a very interactive way is to show how music was impacted by technology, the birth of the LP, the electric guitar, etc. So it's been a lot of fun to do. It's very difficult to do an exhibit like this when you can't get into the space and feel it. So it's been hard. I have a former grad student here helping me with it, and together I think we're putting together a pretty darn good exhibit, and I hope you all get a chance to see it. And I'll be there for opening and giving tours and things. But I hope it's a thing that kind of kicks off that gallery in a way that allows people to appreciate the gallery, because this is it's big. The average 2,000 square feet, would be normal for a university to stuff. We're 3,000, and I coaxed Larry into making it that big so we could bring in big shows as well. And I think that's going to happen. So super exciting to have that. And then a black box as well, where you're going to be doing a lot of dance shows and things for students in a way that this place is going to be worked. It's going to be great.
Yeah, my dream, a live soul band in the first week of classes every term, right? Is that going to be cool? Okay. Yeah. Right? Okay. Yeah. I think we should show another clip. We pulled up some from your time at the Grammys.
Yeah.
And of course, you were the founding executive director. The Grammys, like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, had this it was an existing program, but didn't have a space that was a museum, right? So it's, and then once you had that space, like you were just talking about, the programming that you can do is so much more powerful. So you pulled up a couple of great
Dave
examples.
Matthews. Yeah, I pulled
let's
up
do
Dave Matthews because what you're going to see here is in a 200-seat theater, kind of like this. And I brought Dave Matthews in to talk about his music. Unbeknownst to me, Dave Matthews, I knew he was big, but we didn't realize that 200 seats for $10 a ticket would be scalped. And it was. And so it was filled not with our members, but with people who paid $200-300 to be this close to Dave Matthews. For Dave Matthews' credit, we did this. He heard about that and he did the math to find out how much money we lost and wrote me a check. To pay for the whole thing. Great guy from Seattle. Not originally, but lives up there to this day, spends time up there. So he is, you're going to see this clip. He's explaining, the whole point of it, like here, is to explore the creative process. So I can't remember what he's talking about. It's a long time ago, but you'll get a sense of how this American Strings evolved from something down in Los Angeles called An Evening with, an evening with Dave Matthews, evening with whatever, how that evolved into American Strings.
Those just, obvious, but
That's his manager there, happened to be answering some questions about the business as
they're
well.
heartbreaking too, Confess I'm not quite ready to be there. Still I know why. Sorry about my voice. Did my level best. You give and you give. To this I can attest. 'Cause you made me, you made me, you and me forever. saving. And it's huge. You know what I mean? It's like a giant orchestra. And it's just a tiny little guitar. I don't mean it like it's big, like I'm big. It's big. Look at the size of this thing. And it just has that quality of simple music, but it's just like, holy, and then the temptation to go, dum, 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 da, da, raw, but then you just, that will kill the music. So that was a wisdom that Roy had, and I just love that he liked that song, and then in the end it became, just as he said, a really tiny song, which is what it was meant to be, that we wrote together.
Dave Matthews, yeah.
It's really cool to see him being kind of imperfect or like vulnerable on such a, elevated stage. That's a cool thing that these evening with, there's like a informality, but still a very
And it was
important-
oftentimes after it took off, it was oftentimes filled with Hollywood celebrities. People would come down, sneak in at the end, or hold seats in the back. So they knew because they'd come either before the show and say hi or afterwards. Yeah. And we did everyone from Ringo to Barbara Streisand to Andrea Bocelli. We did Buddy Guy and Jerry Lee Lewis and Taylor Swift and Lady Gaga. I mean, it was just, because everyone lived in Los Angeles or had a house in Los Angeles. So it was very easy for them to come down and to do it. Sometimes we'd get a call and say, I remember Stevie Nicks called once. He said, you got anything going on next Tuesday? And it was like Friday. I said, no, we don't. He said, good, book me. I said, okay. And that was it. We put the word out. It was only 200 seats in Los Angeles, big city, gone. And she'd come in and she wanted to do a songwriting workshop for whoever showed up. So, those kind of things were really special. And they happen oftentimes spontaneously.
Wow. That'll be Corvallis in 10 years, right? Yeah. I think we should pull up one more video, and this is a really special moment when you won a Grammy Award. Did you all know this is a Grammy Award winner sitting here? And I actually so you won the Grammy for the Smithsonian Folkways collection of Pete Seeger, which is such a beautiful collection. And if you don't know it, all of it is if you go to the Smithsonian Folkways website, all of their music is available online, and their liner notes. So I often assign them in my courses. I assigned your liner notes for this in my course. And there's a great anecdote in it about Pete Seeger. Like, what is it? He like brings a sandwich because he doesn't want to like take the.
Was at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I started something very similar to this called American Music Masters. And the idea was, in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, rock and rollers would be inducted, but there was also a special category for pioneers, people who help elevate rock and roll or help rock and roll emerge. And so the first year we did, which is, someone who's been very, very important in my life in many ways, Woody Guthrie. And so I had to call Pete Seeger and say, Pete, you have to be a part of this. In part, we were doing it because the Woody Guthrie Archives was just starting to get going. Woody's wife, Margaret, had collected all of Woody's things. Woody had died early, and Margaret had died a few years prior, and they wanted to create an archives. So we decided, Nora Guthrie, his daughter, and I, to put together this. I had this idea called American Music Masters, once a year, concerts, plural, academic conference, teaching, it was a whole week's worth of stuff. But I needed, no question, I needed Pete Seeger. And I had Arlo. Arlo said, yeah, I'll be there. It's my dad. But I needed Pete. And Pete, I went up to his house in Beacon in New York, and I went to see him, and I explained what it is. And he's sitting there saying, okay, all right, well, here's the thing. If it's a benefit, right? For Woody, right? I said, yeah. He says, okay, so all the artists who you invite have to buy tickets. Like, Pete, they're coming for free. I'm not going to ask them. He says, they got to buy tickets. So, okay. And no food backstage. They have to bring their own food. I said, all right, but I'm going to tell. So what do I do? He says, have him bring a brown bag. I said, okay, I'll tell Bruce Springsteen to bring a brown bag as food. And uh, and I did ask them, and they did. And they brought it. They all brought little lunch boxes and stuff. It was incredible. Bruce actually didn't show up with a sandwich. He showed up with Campbell's soup, all right, which we made backstage. True story. He bought a ticket. No one else did, but he did, and he sat in the audience with his banjo between his legs, and then who was it? Robbins. Susan Sarandon was one of the hosts, and she came out and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, Pete Seeger." And Pete says, excuse me," has to get up, gets his banjo, walks up on stage and plays. That was Pete Seeger, and he carried the house and made sure everybody was a grand sing along. This Land Is Your Land and things, and really started that program, the American Music Masters, because of that. But he was a wonderful guy. I knew him a long time. I interviewed him a lot. And I was a member of what's called Clearwater. It was the sloop that he had to clean up the Hudson River. And they would do festivals all over, including my home state of New Jersey. And he'd come and play. And of course, Bruce, who's from my neck of the woods, did an actual album called The Seeger Sessions. He too, very influenced by him. So it was an honor to do the box set. It was one of three: Woody Guthrie, Leadbelly, and Pete, and we won.
Someone broke into my car once a long time ago, and the only thing they took was my Leadbelly box set.
Is that right? I
Yeah.
got one for you. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
My bike was in the back, but they didn't take that. So this is a great moment where you honor Pete Seeger and the legacy. This is the moment when you win the Grammy.
It's kind of awkward, but
We got to do it.
I
Roll
have
the
to-
tape.
I have this. I will say this though. I will say this because it's funny, and Cindy's sitting in the audience. So the first time we were nominated for Woody Guthrie, we didn't win. I was up against Sir Paul McCartney and Brian Wilson, so there wasn't a chance in hell we were going to win that. Okay, we didn't. But to be nominated is a big deal. You hear artists, 3-time Grammy nominee. You're still top 5 in all the recordings for that year. So we didn't get nominated for Leadbelly, but we got nominated for Pete Seeger. But it was also up against Woodstock 50th anniversary, big box set. I figured, I wasn't even planning to go because we had lots of things going on in the museum, which is adjacent to the where the Grammys were held. And these are held. This was not on TV. You can't say, "Oh, I didn't see it," because there's something called the pre-television, and that's where the bulk of their awards are given. They only give the really special ones that are connected to the most popular music forms and the most popular artists. That's what you see at night. That's what you're going to see Sunday night if you watch the show. So it happened in the afternoon, and I realized, oh, we're almost up. I ran over. My wife and my family, they said, well, should we come down? I said, we're not going to win. Don't even bother. I don't know. What did you do? What were you doing? You were doing, where is Cindy? You were doing something. Oh, yeah. My daughter's baby shower. We're not going to win. So so you tell the story. What happened? So that's where this is from. What happened when I won? Didn't you guys throw the tacos all over the place?
Yeah,
Anyway, go ahead.
that's amazing.
For Best Historical Album, the nominees are Andrew Batt, Simon Gibson, and Chris Mayer. Andreas K. Meyer, Jennifer Nelson, and Robert Russ. John Baldwin, Spencer Doran, Yosuke Kitasawa, Douglas McGowan, and Matt Sullivan. Jeff Place, Pete Reiniger, and Robert Santelli. Brian Kiyu, Dave Schultz, Steve Woolard, and Andy Zacks.
And the Grammy goes to Jeff Place, Pete Reiniger, and Robert Santelli for Pete Seeger, the Smithsonian Folkplay Collection.
He was the sound engineer. I'm like, who's going to talk? No one had a speech. True.
You know, Pete Seeger has been an inspiration to all three of us pretty much for all our lives. And putting this box set together with my colleagues here was not only something that we deem very important, but also an honor. Today, in this world, Pete Seeger stands as an inspiration to all of us. I would highly recommend that you listen to this record because on this box set, with illustrations of human dignity, racial equality, peace, love, environmentalism, all the great things that Pete Seeger stood for. So thank you so much for this, and thank you, Pete.
He's like, no.
I don't want to talk.
That's really an incredible moment. Thank you for letting us see your family recording. And I think we should open it up for
I get free tacos, by the way, over there. No.
I think we should open it up for some questions. And logistically, I think, are there
Yeah, or speak loudly and we'll be able to hear you if you have one.
yeah, so Aaron has a microphone. If you can project, then we can
Turn the lights up a little bit, the house lights.
and while you're all mulling on your questions, I'd love to give a round of applause to Lucas, who just turned the lights up and who's been running sound and AV. Thank you so much. Yeah, so who's got a question for Bob?
Identify yourself as a student, please. All right. Go ahead, Denali. I
Did you
have to
all
admit
hear
to
that?
this? Are you serious? Right.
Have you ever made a really huge mistake on a project, and what did you learn from that?
Let me see here.
Good
The
one.
things I want to admit to, you mean? Yeah. Well, I don't know. Usually the audience is the judge of that, whether you made a mistake. But there is one. I in one of these evening withs, you're only as good as the person that you're interviewing. And early on in the program's history, I got to interview Annie Lennox. You know Annie Lennox from Eurythmics, right? Who's a very sassy woman. And I did not know that. And basically, she took me to the cleaners. And every Christmas, my staff would play that at the Christmas party. And it was horrible. I misjudged her, and I tried to bring some humor to it and to take away the destruction that she was putting on me. And I said a couple of stupid things like I won't even go into that. All I can tell you that is, man, I sucked that night. And my staff never forgot it. It's now in the halls of infamy in the Grammys, the famous Bob Santelli, Annie Lennox interview. And then afterwards she was, oh, that was so much fun. That was great. I want to hit her, but she's a very smart woman. The performance was great. It's just that she saw like sucker up here and decided to go for it, and she did. Almost happened with Barbara Streisand as well, but fortunately I said her name right, and she was okay. But the person who introduced her, Neil Portnow, she took to the cleaners. So you got to be careful, and some of these artists who they're on stage all the time, and they realize they have a live one next to them, and if they feel like having some fun with it, they can, and sometimes they do. So. I admit it,
That's a great
Annie Lennox.
question. For people at home. Oh,
Can you
yeah.
up here?
Sorry to people on Zoom. We will use the mic.
Well, first, I want to thank you for all the American String Series that you've brought to Corvallis, and particularly inviting the community, which we are a part of, to come and join with these programs. It's just been incredible. But I wanted to ask you about one of the first American String Series that you had at the Majestic was Country Joe. And he finished that up with an amazing rendition of his classic song. Did you know he was going to do that?
No, I didn't. I didn't know that he was going to do "Give Me an F."
Yeah.
Give me a U. And so if those of you laughing, you know the famous fuck cheer at Woodstock. And there were some students of mine who came and after the show, I asked one of the students, I said, well, so what did you think? We were studying Woodstock and what history of rock and roll class. And he said, it was really, really amazing. I didn't know you could say fuck on stage. True.
Bob, since it's really clear that you were one of the early people to get the whole kind of museum and music connection going to the United States, all of us want to take road trips. I want to hear where we should be going and why those are the ones we want to visit. Because I know you've been involved in dozens of projects here and abroad. Let's keep it domestic in the United States. Take us on a trip or take us on our summer tour.
Okay. Well, I would start with the Country Music Hall of Fame in Nashville. And the reason why is because it was the first one, opened in 1967. And that gave the idea that we should preserve and celebrate our music in an institutionalized setting. That was revolutionary for the time. I would start there also because there's a great new museum, a relatively new museum. They're called the Museum of African American Music, which is really, really wonderful. And I would stop there. From there, I would head down to Mississippi, and I would stop at the Grammy Museum, Mississippi, one of my projects, because it is the pride of Mississippi. We went to Mississippi because in the Delta was where American music was born. There's no question about it. But also, Mississippi's the poorest state in the union, and the Delta is the poorest part of the poorest state. And the idea was to bring music and opportunity and artists to these young kids who would never have a chance to meet anybody or hear anyone. Everyone from Mavis Staples to even Garth Brooks. Brought Garth Brooks down for a day and worked with these kids on music. It was great. At that point, I'd get on a plane and head to Cleveland, Ohio, and I would go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. If you're a Rock and Roll fan, it's a pilgrimage. You got to go. And I would stay 2 days because you're going to need 2 days to see it all. And I think at that point, I would probably go to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I would go to Tulsa because there are two great museums there, or two great centers. One is the Woody Guthrie Center, which we did. And then the other one's brand new, which is the Bob Dylan Center, which is absolutely terrific. So at that point, you're probably going to want to take a break or so. So what I would do is probably head to California, spend a couple of days on the beach, go to some good restaurants in LA, and then finish up at the Grammy Museum in downtown Los Angeles. Good tour.
All right, the Kesey bus is leaving Eugene. Yeah. We have someone on the side with a question.
Yes.
Hi, Bob. I'm Jerry.
Hi, Jerry.
First, I just want to thank you. I've gone to most, not all of your events since you've been here. And I've learned a lot and enjoyed them tremendously, particularly during the pandemic. It was kind of a beacon of light. So thanks for your contribution.
I appreciate that. They were very difficult to do, but very rewarding because, like you said, it's people stayed connected to not only the program, but to music. And we got a lot of great artists to do it simply because they weren't working and they were more than willing. And Los Lobos, Roseanne Cash, I mean, there were a number of them. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
My question is, you said in passing tonight that you're not going anywhere. Frankly, the rumors are out there in the community. Oh, this is Bob's swan song and he's too busy and he's not going to be here. So I'm wondering if you're going to do album club and what other ways you're going to be part of this community.
Yeah. Part of the reason, like I said earlier, why it made sense to transition to Kelly tonight. I gave you that. But the other thing is I have one more. I've done 9 museums, believe it or not, in 31 years. It's a lot of work. I love doing it. Absolutely love doing it. Did one in India, did one in England. It was fantastic. But I got one that just ached to do, and that was to go back to my home state of New Jersey and to work with Bruce Springsteen and create what something is called the Bruce Springsteen Archives and Center for American Music. I spoke to Larry, and I knew going back and forth twice a year, twice a month. I'm literally going from here up to the airport tonight and catching a 6 a.m. to New Jersey tomorrow. But I could not give the kind of attention to the programs and to the classes that I wanted to teach. So we agreed I would go half-time. That would allow me to keep my connection here. So I'm not going anywhere. I'm still teaching and very much a part what Kelly's going to do and give support wherever I can. I'm going to continue to do album club. But I just, I'm from New Jersey. We're building it on the Jersey Shore, which is my area. My undergraduate alma mater, Monmouth University, is where I first met Bruce Springsteen as a student and interviewed him for the first time many years ago, and 3 blocks from where he wrote the great album Born to Run, right there. And so I wrote Bruce Springsteen's coattails as a journalist. He gave me access and with the band. I grew up with these guys, and I thought, if I had the opportunity to do this, and I got to do it. It'd be a great way to end that part of my career. So I made that decision. And so I'm pretty crazed right now, going back and forth both coasts, but I love both universities and love what I do here and there. So I got the best of both worlds. But, it meant that I had to give up something here. So making sure that something that's very dear to my heart, American Strings is in good hands with her and going to a incredible home, made me feel good that I could do this. So I teach when I can. I have some of my students here. When we do album club, these gals help me out, and they're part of my inner circle. Fiona and Denali, I don't know who else is out there, but we do songwriters workshop and things. So we continue to keep the relationship here, and but I still get to finish my dream over there.
Thank you.
I think we have time for one more question. We have one down here in the front. Where's Aaron with there we go.
You have a question also?
Oh, I think she scooped you, but we're going to do you next.
Next strings or like right now?
Oh,
right. Okay. Hold that thought. Hold that thought.
The question was, do you have a favorite American Strings?
I don't know if I do. I try not to judge them. I try to feel like as long as they go okay, they're my favorites. The Annie Lennox is not my favorite, but I don't know. I would ask you, what's your favorite? Yeah. Yeah, she was pretty good. She was really good. I have to say what that gentleman said. My favorite, even though it was hard and I hated it, kind of, was COVID. During the ones we did during COVID, because it really, I felt like we were providing a even more meaningful service to the Corvallis community, the OSU community, and that artists were willing to do it. So that's kind of in a way my favorite, just because I thought it was necessary and we did good work, you and me together. So thank you. Yeah.
Well, that's okay. So I'm like them. I'm thankful that the community gets to be involved here. We're new to the community, newer in this last few years. I came to the Bob Dylan, I brought my son, and I was just like, oh my God, who is this guy? I'm as starstruck being with you as you probably were when you were at the White House, honestly.
Wow.
It's amazing. And then I saw you and your wife walking, I'm sure it was your wife, I hope, walking downtown. And I'm like,
let's roll.
And I'm like, are you that music professor? And I couldn't even talk. And you're like, I sure am. And I'm like, can you please do something? And I'm like, here I am requesting things. And I just can't believe what we get to experience here, and the student, and I just paid my daughter's tuition. I'm like, are you taking the Beatles yet? Or what are you going to do? You know, because I want to do it. So, but I guess I do have a question. First off, thank you. And I'm probably like everybody else. It's amazing. But why and I know you came here, your daughter was a swimmer, but I was just asking my wife, like, why Corvallis? I mean, we just moved here. She grew up here. I'm here. The music scene, no offense to here, doesn't feel it's not huge. I talked to you about it. I'm like, why is Reeser not packing out like Chris Stapleton? Or why are we not? What's going on? You're like, wait till you see this place. But for you could be anywhere. I think from what I see, you could be anywhere in the world. Why Corvallis? Why here? Why are you staying? Is what I'm interested in.
Well, other than my daughter, to be honest, because of him, because of Larry, really. Seriously. We hit it off, and he sold me on his dream. He had a dream, and I made it my dream too. I love going, it's kind of like writing a book where you start off with just a seed of an idea. And I love the journey. Once you write a book, for me, I don't even open it. It's in the stores, great, done, move on. It's the journey that I love, the journey of writing the book. I love the journey of creating an exhibition. And here, this was a journey to take something that was oozing with potential and enthusiasm and make it something. My only wish was I wish I was her age and I could really, really build it and stay and watch it bloom like it's going to bloom. So that's the honest to God's truth. And we love Corvallis. I mean, Corvallis, I always wanted to end my career on a college campus. Always did. I taught at Rutgers and Monmouth and UW and lots of places, but I never did it full, like a full-time academic, because I always had these other things, these other things that I wanted to do. But I thought coming here, I'd be able to do those other things with the new building and then also teach and give the information that I acquired over an entire lifetime back to students. That's what good teachers do. And so we just fell in love with the place, and I wouldn't want to be any other place. And having someone like Larry Rogers as your guide and someone who said, do it, go for it. That's what you want to hear. That's what I'd like to hear. And that's what we did. And then there are great students here. I have some of my students here that I met who are not just students, they become my friends as well. And they share music with me. I share music with them. They help me. I'm a Luddite when it comes to technology. Thank God they're here for this. But anyway, it's a great community. You're going to love it, as I'm sure you're starting to do. And the college and the university is great. So go Beavs.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's true. Larry said, tell him about the baseball. When my daughter was here, she was a swimmer, but she had aspirations of following her dad. She wanted to be a writer, a sports journalist. And so she started covering, when she wasn't swimming, sports. And she and I were big baseball fans. And of course, it's a baseball town. So she said, Dad, I really want to do this. I said, well, okay, great. I'll get you started right away. Let's write a book together. You'll write a book before you graduate. This will really get you going, right? Because when you write a book, people think you're an expert. You're not, but they think that, and that's okay. So I said, what do you want to do? She said, let's do a baseball book. So we came up with the idea of doing the baseball fans bucket list, which allowed us 162 games in the Major League Baseball season, 162 things to do if you're a baseball fan. And so Jenna and myself, we got a chance to do many of those things. She didn't do them all because she was in school, but many of the things together, like going to every Major League ballpark, and she interned with the Cleveland Indians as a journalist as well. And it was great. And then I said, well, your book, who do you want to dedicate it to? And she dedicated it to the OSU, the first time we won the national championship. And she and Pat Casey was really great. We gave him the book, and he said, you guys should throw out the first pitch. So Jenna and I went to one of the ball games, and I'm on the mound. I throw my first pitch. Of course, it's perfect. It's a strike. And Jenna gets it, and she throws it, and it doesn't go far. She says, give me that ball back. I'm doing it again. And she said, okay. She took it and she aimed and she got it close to the catcher's mitt. And it was good enough. I said, Jen, they got to play the game. She said, I want to do it one more time. I said, no more, no more. But anyway, they signed the ball for us. It was a really great moment because I have a son who's a great athlete as well, but he wasn't interested in baseball. So my love for baseball and I had with my daughter, and writing that book was a great joy. And at the end of it, she says, I don't want to do this for a living.
Bob Santelli, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right.
That was really fun. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Lucas. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, all of you. Looking forward to continuing the conversation.
Hey, God, we'll see you at Album Club. When is Album Club? Well,
Next album club is February 12th.
60th anniversary of the Beatles.
Hard Day's Night. February 21st. People on Zoom, check the date. We're not sure. Good night, everyone.
Everyone.